Hi, friends. How are you today? Here is your friend again, Joshua Adelo. I have a special sister in the house today. She's wonderful. She's a lover of God. She's a practitioner. She has a powerful testimony to share with you guys all over the world, my friends. I just want you to pay attention to this powerful testimony. She's a lover of God and she has this wonderful testimony. By name, she's Cole. Sister Nicole, you are welcome to the audience all over the world, especially Nigeria. They are ready for your powerful testimony. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself, then tell us what you have for us. Thank you.
Hi, excuse me. My name's Nicole. I've been a nurse for 19 years. I've worked in a vast area of healthcare in all capacities under my license, with all age groups, all backgrounds. It didn't matter. I've held the hands of judges, lawyers, carpenters. It doesn't matter. It never mattered to me. What brought me to the relationship I have with God, and getting the gift of prophecy was, I lost my son 7 years ago to a drunk driver,
Mm,
and he was the light of my world. And I needed to prove God was real, or I didn't want to be here.
mm,
I started being a hospice nurse after that. So that meant that all of my patients have less than 6 months less to live, and solely focused in that industry the last 5 years, and became exactly who I needed in my life. And I became an expert in grief support for families and patients, and started showing up for myself in a way that no one else could. And I started having beautiful experiences at bedside with patients. I needed to know that my son was still here somewhere, and I needed to find where he was. I needed to prove that heaven was real,
mm.
or it was too painful. And I remember one of my first experiences with our spirit and who we are after we pass away. Our energy, we're energy. Where our
Mm.
spirit is energy, and it's an energy of love. And when our body passes, our spirit releases from this body. And what I've been able to figure out, from being there close up and personal with people in that place of life and passing, and my own journey, is there are 7 levels to heaven. And I've been able to relate very all different religions together. In Buddhism, they talk about chakras, that if you relate the 7 levels of heaven, you can relate that down to the 7 chakras, and the top one is the crown, and that's your connection to God. And when you pass away, wherever your love is in your when you wherever your heart is where
Mm.
you're gonna sit.
Yeah, yeah.
And how I was able to prove that in my own life, and what I was able to get my gift from, was I started healing my own life. I started healing all of the things in my life
Okay.
that weren't
So sorry
love.
for cutting you. At what age did he die that time? Like when
What's that?
at what age did your son die?
He was 22.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my son was a Marine when he was
Wow.
killed. He was active duty, and that brought me to a whole new perspective as well. But I started healing my own life, the last 5 years. I came from an abusive childhood. I was actually a child that was in shelters and foster group homes, as a teenager, and had very abusive and a non-existent father. But my mother did not make good choices, and she's very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive. I didn't hold space for that until a few years ago,
Mm,
because I didn't understand that she wasn't mentally well, and that I was her scapegoat for her mental illness as a child. To this day, she's not mentally well, and she has made choices in her life that she's not allowed to be in my life,
mm,
because she won't choose to be healthy. And when I started making those boundaries, my light got brighter. I started feeling more love for myself. When I held space for the child that no one did,
mm,
and just said, "Oh my," and looked at that little girl inside of me through the eyes of God. it was very freeing and very sad. I had to hold compassion for my own self in this world. And that was the first time that I'd ever done that.
Hmm.
After being raised in an abusive home, I ended up spending over 20 years with abusive men. And I didn't understand that I deserved love. I've
Hmm.
always been a lover. I've always loved my patient. I've always been that different nurse. I'm the one that holds their hands and hugs them and cares about how they feel. And I've always been that nurse, but never understood that I deserve that person in my life too.
Hmm.
And when I started seeing myself, God took me on a walk through my life.
Hmm.
Um, when I chose to sit and heal, all of a sudden this presence, this energy showed up, and it hasn't went away since,
Hmm.
of love. And it doesn't, that presence does not let me tolerate anybody that doesn't love me in my life anymore. It doesn't let me tolerate um, any abuse. It doesn't let me tolerate myself not living my potential every day. Every day it pushes me to keep going and
Hmm.
saying, Nicole, you've got a place in this world. You're important. You matter. You got this. In facing my childhood and healing, I had a lot of repressed memories that came up that were traumatic.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was something that was hard, but it was the most freeing thing in the world.
Hmm.
Um, I and as so if you look at it through Buddhism's eyes, those chakras, what I was doing was working those energy centers, and I didn't even know what I was doing. I
Hmm.
just naturally had started doing it. And if you do some research online, you can look at what emotions and what things block that energy flow and start viewing that through your life. Shift your perspective to look at your life through that and start seeing where you can make changes in your life. If you are unkind to anybody, stop and ask yourself, why did you treat them that way? Why did you,
So,
if you really truly want to have God in your heart and in your life, you need to take a real hard look in the mirror at yourself and start
hmm.
living that life of that person that you'd want to be. And I said, God, that energy is a best friend energy.
Hmm.
It's the most loving, unconditional, I can't, it's almost hard to describe energy. It's that person that you would always know has your back and loves you no matter what, with the most love you could ever imagine. And I knew that my son was there. I knew my son was with God, and I'll tell you what. So, a few years ago, probably about five years ago, so a couple of years into my journey, I picked up a paintbrush because I had went to our healthcare system for help. The doctors just gave me medications. The therapist, she pushed a workbook at me, and I
Hmm.
was like, I've lost a child, right? I was
Hmm.
insulted. My soul was insulted by our healthcare, and it was a real perspective shift for me because I've worked in healthcare for over 20 years. You guys have to have answers for this pain, and they
Hmm.
didn't have an answer, and it's because it's spiritual pain. they
Hmm.
don't they don't treat the spirit, they
Hmm.
treat the body.
They treat the
And
body.
yes, and Western medicine does not treat the spirit, and that was what was hurting. And
Hmm.
so I guided to pick up a paintbrush one day, and I just knew I was going to be good at it for some reason. And I've never had an art class, and lo and behold, I had this beautiful talent. That's progressed over the last few years now to the point where I can paint photorealistic and draw photorealistic pictures. But how the art played into my journey and prophecy is a few years ago when I worked through all those energy centers and my crown chakra opened, which means I had a Kundalini awakening. If you look that up, please do. In Christianity, they call it the Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
In Judaism, they call it the tree. You worked the tree of life, and you were gifted the top. Every religion has a word and a name for what I did spiritually. It healed physical pain in my body.
Hmm.
I didn't hurt anymore from losing my son because I seen that he was still here and we're energy, and he's always with me and around me if I
Hmm.
tuned into my heart. And that meant that I
Oh,
had
yeah.
to love I had to love the girl in the mirror and see how beautiful she was and know that I deserved a beautiful life. And no, because I had wasted over 40 years of my life having a bad life, people treating me bad. And when I went and put my psychiatric nurse cap on and looked through that eyes at my own life, I realized that I was surrounded by people that would be considered textbook narcissists if you look
Hmm.
into psychology, and if you and that I was just a pawn in their game,
Hmm.
and just to feed their ego, that I was never a person to them. I was just a body to fulfill needs.
Hmm.
And so I had to take all those broken pieces and take them and start putting them back together, of what I had become. And in that process, I was painting the whole time, and it was helping me work through it. It was therapy. It was letting me put something on canvas that I couldn't put into words yet.
Hmm.
And I then, all this out of nowhere, 3 years ago, I started painting pictures of people before I would meet them.
Hmm.
And it spooked me. The first
Hmm.
time it happened, I showed up to a patient's house and I had painted a picture of the mother already a week before that. And I had it in my car for some reason, even. And not only that, I had another picture I'd painted that had significance with their life and what was going on in their life that day.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I can't make this up. Well, then that same morning that I painted that picture, I had also painted a picture of Marilyn Monroe. I don't know, you know who Marilyn Monroe is? I think everybody does.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I wonder where this is going to come into play. Because it was 6 o'clock in the morning. I jumped out of bed and I painted these pictures out of nowhere, and I had to. And I never painted in the morning like that. So I knew something was going on. And that next week, I had a hospice patient that was new. And I walked into her house and I'm sitting back and I'm watching her. And I said, you know what? I said, you remind me of Marilyn Monroe. And she laughs and she says, well, honey, she says, her and I went to school together.
Hmm.
She used to go to school with her. She was in the modeling industry with her after school. They were very good friends. And here she goes in her bedroom and pulls out a yearbook even to show me Marilyn Monroe and her in her yearbook. So I knew that that was why I had painted her, that her friend's energy had came through. And this is why the energy came through, is when I was sitting there, she started sharing with me that she always felt bad that she couldn't do more for her because, her life ended in a tragic way. And all I kept feeling was, no, your friend loves you. And I told her, I said, no, I said, you couldn't have changed anything. You couldn't have
Hmm.
done anything different. And I started having somebody who was just giving me the answers, just telling me
Hmm.
what to say.
Hmm.
And it was healing for her. It gave her peace. It was something that burdened her heart before she was going to pass. This woman's in her 90s. And this next story got real special for me. This is when I really started understanding my gift. And I didn't get my gift, remember, until I sat in my own energy and didn't allow anybody to be abusive to me anymore in my life.
Hmm.
And I'm also widowed, you guys, so I'm single. And that was important though, because that person was very abusive to me, and I had to heal from that. But it was I had to just, okay, Nicole, who are you? You have to figure out who you are in the world. You are, because my kids are grown now out of the house and it's just me. And I had to see, who am I? What woman do I want to be every day? And so I said, I want to be myself.
Hmm.
And so I had a patient. Went a new patient. I go to meet him. Him and his wife are in his front yard waiting for me, and he's in a wheelchair. And this man had been born with a genetic condition where he had very small stature, and he had a lot of deformities as far as musculoskeletal, like where his hands were not shaped, and he wasn't able to use properly. But he had a doctorate in holistic care and was a holistic doctor and practitioner in his life. A beautiful, beautiful man. Anyways, I bent down, so I was at eye level with him and shook it and introduced myself and shook his hand. And it's a very powerful. Sorry, I need to let my dog in. She's on the balcony barking.
Hmm.
Um, I had to. I realized in the hospice that when I'm introducing myself to these patients, we're taking that journey home together. I'm going to be that nurse that's going to hold them through that last days of their lives and possibly be the one that's going to be there at that time.
Hmm.
So I took my work very seriously. And so I introduced myself, and he didn't let go of my hand. And so
Hmm.
I kept his hand, holding his hand. And I said, so where'd you guys all meet? Tell me your love story. Tell me something
Hmm.
about you, and just started being, trying to get to know. And this man started crying. And as he was crying, he squeezed my hand tighter and he wouldn't let go. And so I just kept talking and just kept going with it because I knew something powerful was going on and I didn't know what yet. And so eventually we get in through the visit and whatever. And nothing else gets said about that. And the next week, because I get to see him every week, the next or twice a week. So the next time I come that week, as soon as I walked in the door and he saw me, the man started crying. And I'm sitting there going, what is going on? What? And asked him, I said, what is going on? I said, do you guys want a different nurse? Is there something that's, and they were like, no, 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 no. He shared with me, he had been a patient since birth. He had had multiple surgeries in his life. He had had a lot of medical problems, a lot of,
Mm.
you know what I mean? He's always been a patient. That was part of his life, was a patient. And he said that I was the first person that treated him like a human being in healthcare.
Uh, uh,
And I started crying.
mm.
And I was like, I'm so sorry. I apologized on behalf of every doctor and nurse that had ever made contact with him. And I said, I'm so sorry, sir. And so we had a good visit. And then the next day, a week, I come back and he's crying right away again as soon as he sees me. I said, okay, we need to stop this. He said, what is going on now? And they shared with me the healing that started happening from having me in his life. He said when he was a child, he said in school they would have all the kids line up in a circle to hold hands for activities. He
Mm.
says, and no one would ever hold his hand.
Yeah.
And to him, I was that pretty girl in school. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. This all became something in later reflection I figured out. And he ended up having I ended up calling in a energy practitioner, another nurse that has an energy business. She does craniosacral therapy. If you ever never heard of it, look it
Mm.
up. It's beautiful. It's a hands-on healing energy therapy. And I called her in at the last minute because the wife was struggling really bad with grief.
Mm.
He was in denial, and he was days away from passing. And because there was a level of healing that came out of those last few days, that their relationship improved. And so she was in denial. She says, I can't imagine I'm losing him now. After now we've got this beautiful love that's never been able to be present. And so I called this nurse in and she worked with him, and it gave me an opportunity to focus on her. And at one point, she looks at me and she says, what am I going to do without him? And she breaks down bawling like a child. And I walked over to her and I came up behind her and I wrapped my arms around her and I just held her like a mom would and let her cry. And she was shaking, and I just gave her the words, that God was giving me at the time to give her comfort. And it was the most beautiful experience that kickstarted uh, my um, my goals, my spiritual goals.
Mm.
Um, since then, I have my gift has grown stronger. I now not only will paint or draw a picture of somebody before I meet them. In the picture, I'll also draw something about them that's personal. It'll tell me something about them, like if they're pregnant, and I'll also include something about the conversation that we're going to have. Even like one picture, I drew a plastic bag in, and the first conversation the girl had with me, because we were at work, was about plastic bags. And I'd drawn the picture of her, and also that she was about ready to have a baby, in which she was. So the more I keep focusing on that love and what love that I can give to people, the stronger my gift gets. I'm able to see into the future, is what it is. And it's not seeing per se, it's feeling. When I sit down to paint or draw, all I do is paint or draw what I feel, what
Mm.
resonates with my heart. And then it ends up being something that happens in that next week, or sometimes it's a year later all of a sudden. So when we open that energy, that connection to God, it opens us up to the energy that's all around us. And God is everywhere. And that's where I get my messages from. Some people call it the Akashic records. Some people, it's collective consciousness. Some people, everybody's got a word for it. Judaism, it's the book of life. You get wrote into the book of life. It's that energy that's always around us. And because my heart is open all the way fully, because I treat humans like humans, and I'm going to say that's important to say that humans, we're all just a human being together, the more, the wider my energy field is. Um, so I can, and in Judaism, we believe that time is not linear, that it's circular, and that I was able to prove now through my art. And that's where I knew where I sat because I didn't know spiritually where I sat in the religious world. I just know that my gift is powerful. I know that if I'm in the around the wrong people or sit at the wrong table, it steals from my gift. Because then I have to block it. I
Yeah.
have to put. I
Yeah.
can't be open and be myself. I have to put a shell around it and say, "Oh no, you can't be close to my heart. You're going to damage it. You're going to hurt it."
Thank
And
you so much.
yes,
Thank you so much. I I picked something so important from your testimony, which I just want you to realize if your son did not die, if your son was alive, you might not
I would
realize
have never gotten this. I would have
your,
never. No,
which
it was
means
divinely planned.
at a very, very tough time of our lives,
Yeah,
when we think all hope was lost, or when at our downtime, when you were like, where is God in this
yeah,
matter? At a point of serious trials or temptation or tribulations, that is when sometimes you realize whom you are and you'll
yes.
be able to move on in life with other things. You discover yourself what killed other people, when they got, lost their son or their loved ones and, feel that's the end of the road, at least a child of 21 years old. And
It took when I was able to open that energy and that connection, get my gift, the pain of losing my son went away. It's instant. I don't carry that pain anymore. And that's why I have to share because it is the most painful thing you could ever experience in your life. And I was able to heal that pain. God
mm,
heals that pain
mm,
because now I'm always connected to my son. I know where he is. I know that this life is just for us to learn and grow so we can come back to God
yeah,
whole. I
yeah,
understand that it's all an illusion, that
mm,
we're this isn't who we are. This body, it's not who we are. That we're
mm.
one heart trying to come back together, the heart that's been broken.
So,
And so I knew I couldn't fathom ever finding a way through that pain. And
well,
then all of a sudden it was gone. It was not, does that mean I'm not sad during certain times here? Of course I am, because grief is grief.
hmm,
But there was a deeper pain than just grief there. And there's not a
so
word for it. No
what?
one's made a word for that pain because there's not
Yeah.
a word for it. It is
Okay.
the most horrific. Until you find where your child is, you can't have peace. You don't get peace. And so I needed to be able to still be me and be a nurse and love people. And I knew that's what my son wanted for me. And that was one thing that helped bring me closer to God, was looking at, okay, Nicole, I spent a long time, I wouldn't even get out of bed. I
Hmm.
was so I was sick. I was slowly losing my life force. I was slowly fading out. I was slowly giving up. And and when something came on, that light clicked and said, no, I have two daughters, your son, he wants you to have the most amazing, beautiful life because he thought
Hmm.
you were the greatest mom in the world. He was one of my biggest supporters in life. And I'm like, he still is.
Hmm.
I now, but I realized that it was all divinely timed, that we are in control of our time, and we all need to understand that if you are gifted someone that in your life, it's a gift, and you don't get to decide how long that person stays. And it's not up to us, that we need to treat the ones we love every day like it's maybe their last day, because
Hmm.
we don't know. And everybody's time is already predetermined. So it was something that the biggest thing God had to walk me through was, Nicole, this was all divinely timed for you to find God.
Hmm.
God only gives
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
what he does for
Hmm.
him to for you to lean on him to come back home.
So thank you, Nico. Finally, I want you to advise those who are going through similar situation, like what you went through in that particular time, or from your experience. But from what God has done in your life, what can you advise them to do?
Start healing. This world's full of people that are broken hearts. And a lot of it is people that, when I realized that I spent over 20 years with men that were abusive, when I looked through the eyes of God, it was because they had had a broken heart before they got in a relationship with me. The
Mm,
female in their life before them broke their heart. So then I
mm,
ended up being a fallout of that war that they were at with their own hearts and their own hurting. And that hurting then got put onto me.
mm,
And that's where we all need to start making changes in this world. Is if someone else has broke your heart, heal that heart before you start a relationship with someone
mm,
else. Sit with God and
mm,
find yourself and find that. Because if you go in this past, if you keep jumping from a person to person to person, or if you casually are dating and having sexual relations with people, you're just passing on pain to everybody. We need to start
mm,
valuing our bodies. We
mm,
need to start valuing the sacred connection that sex is.
mm.
It's gotten so far away from God nowadays. And we need, and another thing, quit watching television that is mind numbing. Stop watching violence. Stop watching horror. Start watching things that are love on TV. Start watching things that teach you things.
Hmm.
Start watching things that are healthy mentally and emotionally for you to watch. We've gotten to taken so far away from God through the television and internet because people glorify bad relationships and bad things happening in people's lives, and then people laugh about it.
Hmm.
They'll have reality shows of people's marriages breaking down, and people are literally like laughing about it. It's so unhealthy. And then we're teaching, when children are watching the adults in this world like that, that's what they're learning. They're learning to go out and be a bully because we're letting them watch TVs that shows that are bullies.
Yeah.
There, we need to start reining back that love into the world. If we start looking at how our world's progressed, go back to before when TV first started, it was wholesome.
Yeah. Is it just like what you said? It's not only children, even adults. When you watch
Yes,
consistently every day, you can start seeing it in your vision. When you close your eyes in your memory, you still remember. You wake
absolutely.
up in the morning, it's the first thing you see from the
It
screen.
hardens our
So
hearts.
it
If
is
you look
wrong.
in the Bible, there is a verse, and I don't have the verses memorized, but there's a verse about having a heart that's like a rock. And that's
Hmm.
what it does, is all of that stuff hardens our heart.
Hmm.
Then we are less in tune of what human beings and human experiences are when we're watching people acting that way, because that is not in line with God.
Yeah.
And I also, not only, I've never been a big TV watcher, but I do got very mindful about what I will allow to be around me. Even at work, if they have a TV on, I make sure it's on something healthy,
Hmm.
for the patients as well, but also the music we listen to, the words we sing. I used to listen to heavy metal rock and roll when I was a teenager because of the crowd I was around, not understanding it wasn't even who I was. But when I started realizing what those words were, I was singing someone else's pain.
Hmm.
And when I realized that, I'm like, no, 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 no. And so now I'm very mindful about any music that I listen. It's all what we put in our lives.
Hmm.
How close to God do you want to be? Does this align with the most loving thing in the world for you? Does this make you feel like you can love people more when you're around this environment? And if it's not a yes, then you need to change something. And a lot of times that's people. If you cannot truly feel vulnerable and comfortable to be completely loved in a relationship, it's not the right relationship.
Hallelujah. Thank you so much. I think it's been a wonderful time with you.
Absolutely.
I just want to play this wonderful song for our friends who might want to, one way or the other, those who are going through one challenge or the other. I want to play, I don't know if it's the right thing I'm getting on. Does Jesus care when my heart is pain? Do you know the song?
I don't, but I will share something with you because you said Jesus. So that energy that just opens up that Christ consciousness is what it does.
Hmm.
So if you look at what Christ consciousness is, that's what that energy opens, is so that you are in line with what Jesus taught, and that's just teaching love.
Mm, mm. Thank you. I'm so grateful for
Absolutely.
you. I I I think I might have to invite you again, maybe one of these days. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm going to hand this. I think it's not going to play, you know, but I'm going to hand this now. Then